Thanks, Alex. So I'm really excited. I'm actually bringing with me a speaker that we had at our Code Mobile conference last year. A.Chandrasekaran brings a really great perspective. He's been at Airtel for a little under a year now. Came from Yahoo in Silicon Valley, decided he was going to move back to India. Rather than me giving your whole bio, I mean, what was it like and what has it been like to go from Silicon Valley back to India? What did you find there? What surprised you?
Yeah, so it's a real pleasure to be here. It's my first DLD, and so really excited to join.
You know they'll never let you leave. You're committed now for the rest of your life.
It's like Hotel California. I love it. So really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Last April, I actually moved to India to join Airtel. I'll sort of break the big ideas behind moving into three. One is India is just going through kind of this incredible internet revolution where everyone's moving from voice usage to data usage. So we're really excited to sort of turbocharge Airtel from a voice network to a data network. The other is honestly, after having spent about a decade or 12 years in mobile, I had this theory called the theory of the and, which is for too often, whether it's device makers, app developers, operators, it had been one company growing at the expense of the other. And so I was really excited to go be a part of India's growth, but through this sort of new approach where everyone grew together, and it didn't have to be one company growing and succeeding at the cost of somebody else. And so I was really excited to put this theory of the and into action. And then thirdly, honestly, purely from a commercial and a numbers perspective, you've been a big part of writing the story. The big US mobile operator success story is T-Mobile. And they had a net 1.5 million subscribers in the last quarter. By comparison, Airtel added about 6 million net subscribers in the same period. And so it's growing at roughly about 4 times the size of the US market growth in terms of positive net subscriber adds. So just a combination of this was just a fantastic combination for me to go.
And obviously, compared to a market like the US or Europe where the carriers are really fighting with each other for existing subscribers, you don't have that particular problem, but you have the challenge. You guys have built a big 4G network. And now it's not only getting people to use their first smartphone and buy their first smartphone, it's also convincing them that they need a data plan. We've seen a lot of efforts in emerging markets with the ideas that you maybe give away Facebook or you give away Wikipedia and zero rate that, and that'll get people into data. You guys tried that too, but found that there's maybe some better ways. How are you getting customers to try data who maybe have their first smartphone?
Yeah, so what we find is it's a lot simpler and honestly a lot more compelling to convince somebody to come online rather than come online to Airtel, right? So it's always a much simpler proposition to say, there's so much you could do, connect with your family, get your dream job, see the world, et cetera, if you go online. And in India, oftentimes going online through mobile may be the only way you go online, right? People are not online through PC, and mobile isn't a second screen or a third screen as it is in many other countries. So it's actually both gratifying as well as extremely compelling to get people online. And honestly, if they get online and some of them go use our competition, we're actually okay with that, because as long as they're online, we feel like it's sort of doing the right thing for the country and doing the right thing, in terms of just moving the user forward. The other point, purely from an industry perspective, is operators in any part of the world, they generally tend to make 3 statements, right, to their users. The number one statement is, we have the best network, whether it's a voice network or data network. The second message is, we take to best care of our existing customers. And the third message is, we're cheap, we're affordable. And we've done a really good job in the last few years of message number 1, which is we have the best network with 4G and nationwide coverage and so on. What we're doing a really focused job of is number 2, which is how can we take really good care of existing customers, help them move from 3G to 4G, et cetera. And my sense is this year we'll build out 4G quite a bit in the country. And the speeds are usually about 7x to 10x compared to even the fastest 3G networks.
And I want to get in a minute or two to our other panelists and talk about financial banking and transfer and money transfer, because I think that's really important. Before we do that, though, you guys have recently launched a music service, right? Yeah. Why a music service? You know, we're talking about all the critically important things. Why did you guys decide to do that, and what's the approach?
Yeah, so what we found is people go online because of use cases, right? They don't go online to just get megabytes and gigabytes of data. And so India is one of the first things you'll notice when you land in India is people are insane about music, right? They just love their music, and it's all sorts of music. It's everything from Bollywood to jazz to Western music. And so we actually launched what is probably the only completely open music app launched by an operator. It's open to everybody in the country, and it's called Wink Music. It's not called Airtel, because we genuinely wanted to launch the best product out there. As of, I think, a couple of weeks ago, Wink is #1 on the App Store, and it's the fastest growing product. And actually, the number of subscribers, the paying subscribers on Wink in India is about 8 to 10x the combined number of subscribers by all the other digital music services.
And is that tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands?
It's in the hundreds of thousands of subscribers.
Okay. And I think we have a video, and then we're going to bring out our other panelists.
Yeah, so let's just wrap with that video. We actually made this, this video with about 200 independent musicians who are all in one auditorium. And we launched this as a TV commercial a week or so ago. So we'd love
to have that video, that'd be great.
Of course I'm upset, yeah.
Tanya, but listen,
bye.
It's cold winter night, I'm playing this old guitar. Your picture by my side, but you've gone too far.
Oh, Mari Kumar Chanakdali. Oh, Mari.
Higher, burning desire.
Shakalaka, shakalaka, ooh. You're my baby.
I need them up all night, all night. We can take the party back to my place.
जश्न विच पीने जश्न विच क्लब जाना है ता मेरे नाल नाल चल दुनिया दे मेले विच बस जगह कुड़ी मैं पटावा बस तेनू मैं पटावा बस सुन मेरी गल मेरी गर्ल मेरी गर्ल सुन ला भाई गाल कौन नाल नाल काला मेरी गर्ल
all night
सुन मेरी गल
all night
सुन मेरी गल सुन मेरी गल सुन मेरी गल सुन Give me love. Give me love, love, love.
He's a love machine, love machine.
Hello, listen.
I'm still upset.
Chalandu go vismaritam chedapi punaha vismaranasya klesham na melanasya prutagamanasya shedi iyam kadapi samaptev kache
Music badlo, mood badlo. Unlimited downloads. Sirf Wink Music par.
Well, clearly a fun job. So
So all the music in the ad was actually original music just made for the ad. So we're super excited about making this.
So I wish we had more time to just talk about what Airtel's doing. They're also one of the first places that Google's Google One initiative has been tried out. Really interesting partnerships, bringing Xiaomi, the huge Chinese success story, to India. But I really do want to take some time to focus on mobile payments. And so I'd like to invite Harry and Tayo on stage. Tayo runs Paga, which is an online payment service in Nigeria. Harry's a partner at Excel, and they're the backers of a remittance company. And I think in the developed markets in the U.S. and Europe, mobile payments is interesting. We talked about it yesterday. We had Wirecard on stage, and the idea of paying with your phone instead of your credit card. I characterize that as mildly interesting. What's fascinating is what's going on in the developing world, where you have people that didn't have a bank account, and the role that mobile payments has played. And I'm going to mix things up. I know I said I was going to start with Anand, but I think I'll start with Tayo. Tayo, talk about what you're doing in Nigeria, and talk about what life was like before Paga and what it's starting to be like for those that have it.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. Also my first DLD. So I run a company in Nigeria called Paga, and we're the largest mobile payment service in Nigeria. And maybe I should just give a quick background on Nigeria real briefly. Nigeria is the largest country in Africa with over 170 million people, and also the largest economy with $520 billion worth of GDP. Now, Nigeria is, with only 36% of the adults are banked, and only 15% of adults having a debit card. So we're an incredibly cash-driven society. So really, to do anything, you have to carry cash around with you. Point-of-sale devices almost don't exist, right? There are 40,000 active in 2014 across all of Nigeria. So really what the challenge in Nigeria, and the issue, what got me to start Paga was my own frustration carrying cash around with me, right? But almost everywhere I had a cell signal. And if it was not from Airtel, it was from MTN. If it was not from MTN, it was from Glo, and we all carry multiple phones. So you actually didn't care which network you were on, truly. So really, the reason for starting this service and the thinking is how do we reduce the use of cash, and how there have to be better ways to transact. And that's what got me starting Paga. So really, before you'd see people carrying a lot of cash around, and people standing in long lines at the bank, and really inefficient, staying in traffic for 3 hours. Just imagine staying in traffic for 3 hours just to pay your Comcast bill, right, your cable bill. That's the kind of stress that it was. And that's
actually, if you go into a Comcast store, I'm pretty sure that's what happens. But can you talk, because one of the most advanced use cases that you guys have seen is with your own employees, where they get their paychecks via Paga. Talk about what it means to the economy when that money goes digital. Does it get spent more? Does it get spent more frequently?
Yeah, so what we've done is we have a wallet, and you can fund that wallet either by going to one of our many agents. These are, think of 7-Eleven stores, Tabak, and you can go there and put money in your account. But you can also be funded by, say, payroll, right, from your employer. And what we found, even at Paga, is that when we made the shift to have our employees get paid on Paga, the usage of Paga really increased. And what they do now is they don't have to collect the cash. They can actually go out and send some of it maybe to their family. They can pay their bills. They can send money to bank accounts directly, instant, real time. This is actually one innovation where Nigeria has leapfrogged the West significantly. It's not about waiting 3 days for the money to get to the other bank. It gets there within 5 minutes, is the SLA. So it's something that Nigerians actually take for granted, and in the West doesn't exist, right? So it's actually created the opportunity for people to do a lot more things with less friction, right? So I think the impact to the economy is allowing for commerce to happen in a frictionless way.
And Anand, so if Tayo's, after cash and going after killing cash, is that the approach you guys are taking with Airtel Money, or what's the thinking?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Airtel Money is a digital wallet that Airtel has. And absolutely, so one of our fundamental philosophies is cash is the enemy. And if you need to be friends with other folks you might be competing with in the future in order to take on cash, then it's absolutely well worth it, because I think cash is probably one of the most inefficient ways of transacting financially, but it's still such a force of habit, right? Like, just think about it. Our own behavior is that we might leave home without our wallet and without cash, but we very rarely leave home without our phone. And so it's just so much more of an intuitive way to use a phone as your preferred way to transact, as opposed to having to carry cash or other instruments. The other big principle for us is, in addition to cash is the enemy, is this notion of open loop, which we talked about in music. It's the exact same thing with financial transactions as well. In fact, just a week ago, we did a refresh of Airtel Money, which for the first time is open to all the other operators as well. So even though it's still called Airtel Money, it's open to all the other Indian telecom subscribers. And it's sort of one very small but strong step on our part to sort of say it has to be open. So those two principles, I think, we keep coming back to. The other is obviously, this is not a frivolous area. It's people's money. And so one of the things banks tend to do really well is to convince people that you can leave your money safely with them. In fact, there was a survey that was done in terms of who people trust more than anything else with their very sensitive information. And banks, not surprisingly, came up at the top of that list. Mm-hmm. But right after that was mobile operators. And so the good part is, I think, mobile operators and folks in the mobile operator ecosystem tend to have really high consumer trust. Now it's up to us to sort of go gain the trust that we can actually store people's money. And so safety and security is another huge part of just convincing people to adopt the solution.
Sounds good. And Harry, you guys come at this from a little different perspective. Excel hasn't necessarily yet invested in a country's internal mobile money system, but you have invested in a company that does mobile remittances. So basically, correct, people that want to send money from one economy to another. Talk about the company you invested in and how it plays in with these inter-country things, bringing money in digitally via mobile.
All right. So I work for Excel. We're a venture capital firm. I'm not sure if my microphone...
Oh, now it's on.
Here we go. So I'm with Excel. We're a venture capital investor. We look for companies that can become very important companies in very large markets. And we've always been investors in payments businesses, but payments businesses in developed countries. So we learned about the remittance industry, which is a massive industry, where roughly $500 billion of money is being sent by migrants from developed countries back to developing countries. So think about a Filipino working on the oil platforms in Norway, sending money back home to the Philippines. Typically very small amounts, like $150 per transaction, but many, many times a year, up to 30 to 40 times a year. So normally, in the past, the way this was done, they would walk up with cash to a corner shop, give the cash would be transferred to the other side, and somebody would come on the other side, pick up cash, and the transfer would have happened. Today, a large part of that goes all via mobile phones. So in Europe, where this particular business, World Remit, is based, most migrants actually have bank accounts and credit cards, which is very different from the United States. So they can use their mobile phone to instantly transfer money to their relatives in the Philippines, India, etc., where there's a number of payout options. And the payout options are either cash or deposit into a bank account, but now increasingly deposit in mobile money accounts like those of Airtel, or, for example, a payment system like Taos. So you go from a world where people used to have to walk up with cash, get kind of gouged, like have to pay 10% or so commission to transfer a little bit of money across, and where cash would be picked up, to a completely cashless transaction via a mobile phone. Now, the beauty of that as well is that there is an electronic trail. So the problem with many of these businesses in the past was that there's bad money that ends up in the system.
And that's what I wanted to get in for the whole group is, let's talk, there's sort of this replacing cash. Let's talk a little bit, why is cash bad? I mean, again, I think sometimes in a developed economy, we tend to think, oh, these payments are equal, maybe I'll you not carry cash for safety reasons, but it's 6 of one, a half dozen of another. But there really are some bad implications of cash, particularly in inefficient economies. Tayo, I don't know, have you seen demonstrably how cash can be bad from either a government perspective or just from a high charge?
Yeah, so, I mean, the impact of using cash, especially it varies across the economy, right? Definitely at the banks, the handling costs, et cetera, are really high. I think I saw a report that talked about the cost of handling cash, even in Europe, is about almost 2 to 3% of GDP, right, across EU. So for the banks, you have that issue. But for retailers, you also have a significant issue because then they have to create a ton of processes just around protecting their cash, right? And by doing things electronically, then they get a trail. They know which one of their staff did what, and the money gets into their bank account without having to worry about it. Or if they don't have a bank account, into the mobile wallet. So I think what we've seen is that we've seen both the big merchants and retailers understand the impact of getting that money electronically, and they also know the money is secure before they give service, right? So take, for example, in Nigeria, the largest television company in Nigeria, MultiChoice, partnered with us out of this principle. So they already have the satellites out there. It's about how do I get payment points close to your home. And so now people walk into our agents and they pay for their satellite TV, and their satellite TV is turned on instantly because MultiChoice has the confidence. It's received the money electronically already.
Right.
So it just saves a significant cost in their business on their cash handling. And that goes down even to the micro retailer. And so we're starting to see that with our agents now, who are micro retailers, SMEs, who are realizing that they can do business electronically and grow their business that way.
And I wanted to ask both you and Anand, because a lot of the times it's spent sort of what was it like bringing Silicon Valley to where you are? But I actually think people underestimate the knowledge that you guys can bring back to Silicon Valley and Europe in terms of really the mobile money is a great example of something that is far more advanced in developing markets than it is in mature markets. What do you, if you had some advice to give to entrepreneurs in Europe and the US, what would it be?
Well, I think completely agree with what Tayo was saying. I think because digital money services are transporting bits, right? It's sort of unarguable that transporting bits is a lot more efficient than transporting something physical if your goal is to get it from point A to point B quickly. We were talking about this yesterday. In India, this is a system called Hawala, which is the way I transfer money in a very offline world is I'll go over to Ina and say, hey, Ina, my wife and kids in this village require some money. Could you ask your brother who lives in that village over there to transfer some money over to them, and I'll give you the money over here. And usually they end up having 10%, 15% interest or the cost of doing it. But it's actually, that guy probably is the family's neighbor. And he's just walking over to the next house and giving him some money. And so not only is it inefficient, but it's not well documented. And so there's a lot of sort of advantage that people get taken because of this. And so just the efficiency that a digital service brings is incredibly valuable. The other is, going back to your question about advice to the Valley and taking stuff from the Valley, is I think you can't underestimate the value of habit forming, right? Like one of the things that Silicon Valley is so incredible at doing is you don't wake up today and one of the things you do when you wake up is to go to Facebook or to go to Twitter, and they've formed such a successful habit of using the service every day. And I think there's a lot that services in Africa, services in India can learn from that in terms of what causes a habit-forming, addictive, really well-built service that gets people to use it over and over again. Because honestly, if you're fighting that battle, then you have to be as good as any other digital service out there. So that's probably the one I would take from the Valley or from California, where great products are built. But the flip side is just you can't launch one product everywhere in the world and hope for it to win in each market. It's got to have some market-specific changes. And so I think the big thing to bring back to the Valley is if you have an engineering team, it makes no sense to have one central engineering team in Silicon Valley that's building a product for, let's say, 15 countries in Africa. There has to be some knowledge of each market.
And we were talking, you've seen this, and I'll get to you in one sec, Tayo, but you've seen this in the smartphone market where that has really been the case. Global companies, whether it's Google with their products or Samsung, you know, these global giants, they basically build models and they say here, and they have a tiny local team that maybe makes sure the manual can be read or you know, the right adapter, but the products are not very local. And you've seen much better results with Micromax in India or some of the folks that are targeting specifically the Indian market. Can you talk about that for just a sec?
Yeah, so it's really no surprise that as, you know, so there are about 90 million, 95 million smartphones in India today. And as, you know, it's very likely going to double in the next 12 months, right? So as about 100 million new smartphone users are going to come online, they're going to have some pretty high demands, and they're not going to accept a device that was built for a different market, right? And so it's no surprise that today, you know, Xiaomi is the #1 phone maker in China, and Micromax is the #1 phone maker in India. And a lot of what they've used to make themselves differentiated and superior is a deep knowledge of that market. And so my sense is, particularly as OEMs open up, you know, services revenues, et cetera, it's going to really come from market-specific services or a generic service that's highly, you know, successful, that's then slightly customized by market. And my sense is that trend will only overwhelmingly continue to be a big deal in each market.
And Tayo, we talked about it in our background. We didn't talk about yours. You worked in the Valley also. You worked for Cisco and some other places. What are some of the things you tell your colleagues or former colleagues in terms of that you've learned since going back to Nigeria?
You know, our chief technology officer at Paga puts it best. He says, you know, you have to build appropriate technology, right? And it's really about that deep understanding of what the market is doing. So I'll give you one example. When we started Paga, we sat around a table and we decided that our agents, these are service points in the community, would be able to do transactions for the customer. That was not done anywhere else in the world when we were making that decision, but we didn't spend too much time thinking about it, but it was because we understood the cultural norm in Nigeria, where Nigerians love to send someone to do something for them, right? And we culturally are used to doing that. So you don't want to figure it out, you say, actually, do it for me. And that has actually taken off like wildfire, right, to be able to do that. So, I mean, what we eventually want to get to is more and more people doing things on their own, but there's certainly a certain market that does that. So it's really about thinking about the cultural norms and understanding it very well, and not thinking that what works in London is what's going to work in Lagos, right? And I think that's really, really important. But that said, you know, I think it's important to also note that, I mean, when I look at the Nigerian consumer is not too different than you and I. They're actually very well connected. They want to really be part of this connected world. And they're heavily on Facebook, they're heavily on Twitter, they're online. And I've been amazed at those who are using WhatsApp, all these stuff, right? People who I wouldn't have expected, but they're getting online and paying the data costs, et cetera. And really what they want are just services that work for them. Now, the leapfrog is they're not going through all the things we went through, but they're getting there.
And Harry, a similar question. I mean, Excel obviously loves the kinds of things that, you know, get developed in one place and you can bring around the world easily. Obviously, Angry Birds was an investment that Rovio that you guys made. But how do you guys balance wanting to build big global successes with needing to have market-specific understanding? What advice do you guys give to the companies that you invest in?
It's very much what you've touched upon before. It's in many ways, every market is different. Even in this context of World Remit, the remittance company, even migrants act very differently depending on where they come from. So Filipinos in Norway don't search for remittance providers. They react to display advertising. Nigerians in France react to search. So every country, every segment will act in different ways, and it's something that you absolutely have to focus on. One thing that we didn't talk about, which I think is very important, by the way, is compliance. So one of the key things in mobile money businesses and remittance businesses is compliance, making sure that there's no money laundering, no ill-gotten gains that get into the system.
And there's a lot of rules that you all have to navigate that are all country-specific.
And the issue is that the banks themselves are actually the strictest enforcers of it. So a lot of businesses in this market have been driven out of business because the banks say, we no longer want to give you a bank account. And without a bank account, the business cannot operate. So compliance is one of the things that is critically important.
So I would love to keep talking to you guys, but we are almost out of time. Does anyone have a burning question? We probably have time for one question. Well, I encourage you guys to approach. I mean, these are three really smart folks, and there's just smart on a million topics. Oh, we got one right here.
Patrick Martin from Strata Partners. So do you have plans to roll Paga out in the rest of Africa and internationally? And where are you going to start?
Sure. So we definitely have plans to roll out across the rest of Africa over time, right? I like to say our Africa strategy is to win Nigeria. And if we win Nigeria, we will win the rest of Africa. And we've already seen this playbook being played out by the Nigerian banks. So currently, Standard Bank from South Africa is the largest bank by assets across Africa. It is actually one of the smallest banks in Nigeria. And very soon, you're going to see UBA, Guarantee Trust Bank, be the largest banks across Africa. And they're already moving across the continent. So I think the same thing is going to happen in mobile payments. If we win Nigeria, which is by far the largest market, I mean, I didn't talk about, we have 70 million users online last year. This compares to 2005, where we had only 5 million, right? The population size we know of, the GDP. And so once we do that, we're going to now move to other markets. Absolutely.
Thanks. Well, I do apologize. We are out of time, but thanks to Harry and Tayo and Anand for bringing all your knowledge and traveling quite a ways to be with us. Thanks.